So a 2-bed, 3-bath, built in 2004 townhouse is now worth $446,800, up $2,000 from last month and up over $10,000 from last year. We are noticing a little bit of a slowdown here in the year-over-year price growth, but let's dive into it. My name is Adam Fyfe, your Calgary realtor. This is the Townhouse update. If you want to see the other updates that I've recorded this month, go ahead and scan this QR code or go ahead and click the link in the description and you'll be brought to various different things. If you're looking at booking a call, you want to read the PDF report, you want to know what your townhouse is worth in today's market, or you just want to know what's going on in Calgary, the links are in the description. There's a lot of value for you to unpack there. But let's dive into it. So the townhouse market update for Calgary in March 2025. If you want to read this on your own, skip to the next chapter. I won't be offended. As other property types, year-over-year sales fell by over 9%, while new listings increased by almost 4%. Despite the sales declines, both sales and new listings remain above long-term averages for the month. This drop in sales pushed inventories to 655 units, more than double the level that we saw last year, though still lower than historical levels for February. Months of supply improved across the city. The South and East districts have the tightest conditions at under 1.5 months, while the Northeast district has almost 3 months. So lots to unpack here. We're still relatively strong in terms of the market activity. We are noticing slowdowns, doubling from what we saw last year. Inventory, only 700 units left over in the city. It's still a very large city, so there's definitely going to be pockets where there's not a lot of inventory in general, but we got to break it down and figure out where the market is hot and where it is not. So $446,800. Like mentioned, the link in the description will bring you to the benchmark attributes. You want to make sure that you have a general understanding of what that price gets you. And this is the attributes for the entire city. But when you're looking at different quadrants, you can see 1996, 2003, 76, 2012, and 81 with the other respective quadrants in place. So just make sure that you have a general understanding of what those attributes are. Now, you will notice that this negative here, I'm going to start to do this every month. Last month, the year-over-year average was around 5%. This month, it's down to under 3%. Are we going to dip into negative year-over-year growth? There's a possibility of that. It really depends on some things like the tariffs as well as the political realm. We're going into an election here probably pretty soon. But the market is still fairly strong. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see an increase in activity over the spring going into the summer, offsetting that a little bit. Maybe not getting down to the negatives, but definitely getting down to very low growth year-over-year. So let's go on here. This chart just shows some information over the last 13 months. It is a very interesting chart. You can see the price point here is the red. You know, we did peak out around 469,000 last year. We did see a steady decline going into the winter. Are we at our winter lows now? You know, we saw a small increase, which we see this every single year. We typically slow right down in November, December, January, and then February, March, April, we start to see some increases in price as the market continues. One of the things I want to note here is that when we're comparing to last year, we were comparing to one of the hottest markets the townhouse sector has ever seen in Calgary. You could see that the sales outpaced the inventory for 4, 6, 8 months in a row. It was pretty crazy. There wasn't a lot to choose from, and that in turn increased the price point pretty dramatically. Then we started to slow down, which we slowed down in all property types throughout Q3, Q4. Now we're starting to pick back up. You can see that the sales are still roughly in line as to where they were last year, but you can see the inventory levels have doubled, which is good. We want the inventory, we want more choice for people, and I would imagine we're going to continue to see somewhat of this trend of inventory continue to stay around here in 2025. Now, this is the same information as the previous slide, but in numerical fashion. So you can see that, you know, you got 318 sales versus the 351, the new listings. You can see we're roughly the same as last year. But when you look at the inventory, 700, 655 compared to the 300, we had very, very tight conditions. We're at the amount of inventory now that we saw in August of last year, which is welcoming news in my personal opinion. You can see that the days on market is 31 days. You know, it's the highest that we've seen in a while. You can see October and November of last year was at 31. The benchmark price, $446. We're only down, roughly $18,000 from what we saw last year. So to get back up to that price point, I don't think is impossible. I think that the townhouses are going to see some increases. We're not going to see the aggressive increases that we saw before, But I would still imagine we're going to see some increases in this market, especially with the median price and the average price being above the benchmark attribute price for condos. 482. Like, look at the average price all of last year, right? We haven't actually seen that average price before, right? You can see the median price, again, that price right in the middle. We're at the high point of where we were last year. So I would expect we're going to see some price increases in the townhouse market. Again, not as aggressive what we saw before, but increases nonetheless. So let's move this over here. Okay, so this is the market as a whole. So here's February from this year and last year. This is the month of February, and here's the year to date. So you can see that sales were down, 13%. You can see that the sales volume is down. The new listings is up, and the inventory is up by over double, right? The months of supply year to date last year was under 1 month. Now we're at 2.21. Still considers a seller's market in my personal opinion, but pretty close, pretty quickly going up to a balanced area where you still could see price increases, but not as dramatic as what you would have when the whole market itself is under 1 month. Like just the month of February, very aggressive, hot seller's market. Not like that anymore. Sales and new listing ratio is still at 60%. This is the year-to-date average over the entire year, right? The month, you can see that the month of February is different. We're taking January and February and we're kind of adding them together. You can see that we're still at 60%. Still relatively strong market, still moving. Sales to new list price has dropped below 100%. You can see last year on average, a lot of people were getting above list price. Now they're starting to get about 99%, which is down. And then the days on market average. Okay, so let's start to look at the total market, right? So these are the year-to-date sales, right? Still relatively strong. So if we look back over the last 10 years, you can see that we're well above where we were from our depressed years. But now we're comparing to where we were at these super hot markets that we've received. So you can see that when in 2022, it was an absolutely crazy year for Calgary. Very affordable townhouses. You can see that we saw over 800 sales already to this point in 2022. You see 2023 dipped down, 2024 saw an increase, and now we're starting to see maybe this is where we're going to start to land a little bit more in this market. Now, when you start to look at the price range, again, look at the blue bars here from 2022. Sub $300,000 and $300,000 definitely dominated this market, where it's pretty quickly shifted to the $400,000 to $500,000 price range, where the $400,000 price range is taking the most amount of sales so far this year. Now, this is the same information, just a numerical value if you're curious. If you look at already this year, kind of interesting stuff. I think it's kind of cool. This year, we've already had over 3 over million sales. Last year, we only had 1, and they were actually all in February. If you really care, you can break it down, and yeah, you can do that if you want. So this is the total sales by property type. So this is kind of just showcasing where the sales were in the entire city. We're looking at the purple section of these bars. So you can see the southern quadrant and the city center quadrant have the most amount of sales. 56 sales in general just for the townhouse market, followed by southeast. Then you've got your northeast, north, northwest, and east and west. You can see east isn't a very big quadrant, so they always are going to have the lowest amount of sales. This just indicates kind of where the busyness is in this market. It's kind of disproportionate as well, I must add, because the southern quadrant is quite large. So I mean, if you again click the link, you go to the PDF files, and you scroll all the way down to the bottom where the map is, you can just see it doesn't actually look that large per se, but there is a huge number of homes in pretty much jammed packed throughout this entire quadrant, allowing these numbers on these charts to kind of disproportionately, in my opinion, show that there's a lot more activity there, okay? Just because the quadrant has a lot more homes. And I should find out exactly how many homes that is. So, new listings. New listings is definitely going to be a topic of conversation for both the apartment sector as well as the townhouse sector. You can see that we are seeing an increase in new listings, right? 2022, we had a lot of sales, but we also had a lot of listings. We are starting to continuously increase in new listings, which is welcoming news for a lot of people, okay? We want balanced market conditions. We don't want super hot seller's market. We don't want a depressed buyer's market. We want balanced conditions. And it's nice to see that we're seeing some increases in the new listings. Now we just got to find out where all those new listings are, if they're in one quadrant or the other. So when we start to think about the inventory or the amount of homes left over at the end of the month, once things come to the market, they get offers, then they sell, what's left over, you can see that we are increasing quite rapidly to a more comfortable level, right? 4,000 units in the entire city. This is single family, semi-detached apartments and townhouses all combined into one, and we are noticing an increase in inventory, which is fantastic, right? The most that we've seen in the last 4 years, which again is welcoming news in my personal opinion. So with that in mind, obviously, we're trending to a little bit more of a balanced condition. You can see that this line here is starting to creep up. If you look at the townhouse market in 2020, we're at 6 months. That is a very strong buyer's market, right? That is a buyer's market. There was a lot of great opportunities in 2020 for opportunities. Obviously, there were some things happening in that year, so I think you can understand why the market was at that level. But we are now starting to increase to more of that more balanced condition, probably end up around that 3 to 4 months of supply after things kind of figure out what's going on here in Calgary, especially with the political realm. So if you're curious of what your townhouse is worth in today's market, I have people doing this once a month, once every quarter, once a year. Scan the QR code, right? This QR code will bring you to the instant home evaluation tool. It's pretty cool. You can also click the link. It's the first link in the description. Go in and put it in, right? It spits out an instant homogeneous valuation. Yeah, I'm going to call. I'm going to say hi. I'm going to say thanks for watching the channel. And I appreciate all the viewers here. A lot of people are just curious of what's going on with the market. Maybe they want to figure out how much equity they could pull for refinancing. Maybe they're just curious about what's going on in the market. That's cool. Go ahead and use the tool. It's pretty fascinating. So with that in mind, this is the breakdown now of all of the quadrants in the city. So you can see city, center, northeast, north, going all the way through the list. Now, when we look at this here, this is sales, total sales in the quadrant. This is the total new listings. And this is the sales to new listings ratio. So this is a first indicator as how strong that quadrant is doing over others. You can see we see lows here of 54%, which is still relatively, decent for the market. They're still moving. But then you've got places like East, which again, if you look just how small the numbers are, they're at 82%, right? So it's still moving relatively fast in that market. Now let's consider that East Calgary is $304,000. When you look at the attributes and you go over here, you're like, oh, well, that's for a 1976. And then you look at, let's just go for the most expensive one at 603 in City Center, but then you consider, well, that's a 2003. You can also see that there's no garage and no basement for a couple quadrants in the city. So getting these numbers and then overlapping out the attributes obviously is going to paint a bigger picture. So months of supply, this is another good indicator. How fast is the market moving? How fast would the inventory get cleared out if no new buyers came to the market and it was just the same pace that it was at? You can see that the majority of homes are what looks like, to me, at least from a fast level, under 2 months, but with the average being 2 months, which is still a seller's market. So don't go in there thinking you're going to get the rockstar deal unless you're looking at townhouses that have been on the market for a little bit longer. And as a listing agent or a seller, don't just go on the market thinking that you're going to get $10,000 over list price unless you actually plan for that based off of marketing and price compared to whatever there's going on in your communities and trying to market certain things about that home. So month over month growth, you can see that the city center has seen 2 months of consecutive declines. Same with west as well as east. We have seen some increases, especially in the northeast here. They saw a $7,500 increase in the benchmark price, which is pretty crazy. You can see a $4,300 in north and a 39 month over month, kind of getting out of those winter lulls in the northwest as well. So with that being said, this is kind of the prediction area of townhouses in 2025. I wouldn't be surprised if we dip into the negatives. So this red bar here is the benchmark price year over year. So you can see that for the last, let's just call it 4 years, we have seen every single month see year over year growth for the last 4 years. Okay, consistent growth for a long time. We are now starting to slow down a little bit. It's dropped down relatively quick. You can see that last year we are at 20% year over year growth, and now we're around 3% year over year growth. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we get that down into the negatives, but it wouldn't be for very long in my personal opinion. You can see that we're still relatively close to the price point that we were at. It was about $469,000. Now we're at about $449,000, give or take. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we start to see some slow increases in the price point for townhouses. I don't think we're going to see a crazy dip off. I think that these are still very affordable for people moving to Calgary who've rented for a year. Now they're looking at getting in the market. I just don't see a correction here, but I do see a lot more inventory and I see a lot more choices for people who are looking at getting into the market. They have some patience. They look at things that have been on the market for 20, 30 days. Sure, they can get some deals. I just don't think we're going to see that average or that benchmark price dip into that negative territory for too long. So again, looking at these last 4 years, you can just see how much price growth we've had. We were at $300,000 in 2021, and now we're at $449,000. Okay, or is it $448,000? 446. Whatever the price was, we have increased at a dramatic rate here in Calgary. Yeah, we're starting to see some slowdowns. Yes, there's a lot of uncertainty with tariffs and the some political decisions and stuff like that. But the Alberta economy is still optimistic and strong. Yes, we're going to see some hiccups in different industries based off of these counter tariffs and stuff like that. But overall position for Alberta is still relatively strong. I do not think we're going to see any crazy corrections in this market. A slowdown, sure. But are we going to see any major price decreases? I highly doubt it. Go ahead and comment your thoughts below. If you think that I am wrong and you want to share that with me, I'm more than happy at replying back and letting you know why I think these things are. So thank you very much. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.